Good morning. It is a glorious Saturday morning, a little bit overcast, but the birds this morning are going bonkers. I have a robin nest building right here. I have tree swallows and song sparrows and chipping sparrows. Everything's alive right now with the wonders of birdsong, and it's so awesome. I love these mornings. But it is the first couple days of May, and our burn ban is off, which is very exciting. April always goes by really quickly because of sugaring season and stuff like that, but we always amass a bunch of stuff that we like to burn, like wood scraps and things like that, and pieces of trees that we've pruned or broken off, especially this year. So I'm just gonna light a little fire this morning, and I have a couple of chores to do outside. I mean, I have a ton of garden work to do. Listen to those tree swallows. Anyway, but I bought a new little tool. So we are currently actually planning a canoe trip for trout fishing in a couple of days, and I've always loved to watch people light fires with like a flint. I think that's what this is called. Yeah, like a flint. And so I bought one, and I'm excited to try and get a fire going. So I've got some milkweed pods here that are dried up, and a bunch of just plant material. So I'm gonna try and start a fire with it. I'm pretty stoked. Yeah. So let's try this. Oh yeah. Ooh. It's windy. There it is. Yes. Okay, well that was pretty cool. She's roaring now. I gotta get some other stuff on it so it doesn't go out, but that was pretty neat. Well, it's hard to believe, but my tomatoes are already ready to be potted up. Time just goes by so fast at this time of year. Actually, in the last couple of weeks, been kind of reflecting on the state of affairs on our planet these days and in the world. And I'm seeing a lot of kind of social media posts around gardening and starting a garden and things like that. And for people who are interested in food sustainability, I feel like there are other easier options that may be a little bit more sustainable or even more cost effective, because when I think about, what's realistic around your own personal food production, I actually think about budget. And there's several different kinds of budgets. The first, of course, is a financial one, or money. And for me, the second one is actually a time budget. And I am lucky because I have a job where a good part of the summer I am not at work. So those hours I can devote to my garden and to food preservation. And admittedly, food preservation can, depending on how you're preserving, take a significant amount of time. But some methods are actually time effective. And so if you were brand new to the food growing scene and you're worried about, food security, I would actually not recommend gardening or growing your own food, because it is a lot of time. You have to know what it is that you want to grow and how your family eats. So as an example, Brian and I are avid hunters and fisher folks. And so we do hunt and catch a lot of our meat. And that is not the reality for a lot of people. And so I think it's not really smart to say, get out and hunt and get out and fish, because that's just not the reality. Or even produce your own meat. I had meat rabbits for a long time. We're taking a break this year, and I raised turkeys a couple of years. I don't really do meat chickens because I prefer rabbit. Or we prefer rabbit. But that's just really not realistic for a lot of people. But what is realistic, and I think for the great majority of folks, is to shop the sales, buy food when it is on sale. And I'm not even going to talk about quality of food or where you source your food from, because it is not my place to tell anyone else where to get their food. We all have different situations and budgets. But, if you buy in bulk and preserve your food, I feel like that is probably the lowest hanging fruit for food security, and is more sustainable than, you know, gardening and things like that. The truth of the matter for gardening especially is that, especially when you're growing on a small scale, like I do, our garden is probably, I don't know, it's about 50 by 30 feet. And so it is a fair size. It requires a ton of work. But if I had a crop fail, and that was all I was relying on, it would be a huge input of time, a huge input of money, especially if I'm starting my own seeds and growing the plants that require shelving and lights and just the time to keep it all. And so it kind of sounds like I'm advising people not to grow, but that is kind of what I'm doing. I mean, if you have the space and the time and the energy and the budget and all that stuff, both time and money, awesome. But if you don't, who cares? Just go to the store, buy in bulk when you can, when there's sales, or if you have kind of a wholesale place, even Costco, and then preserve your food so you can have it long term. That has been the greatest money saver for me. Yes, preserving food, especially if you're pressure canning, it does take time, or even water bath canning does take time, but it is time well spent, because the volume of food that you can preserve in that small window is actually a lot. And so as an example, we really enjoy canned corn. And so every year during corn season, I don't grow our own corn because it's just way too much trouble and takes up a ton of space, depletes soil. I have a number of reasons why. We've got a farmer right around the corner that grows corn. So in the morning, I go over, I grab a couple of dozen corn, I boil it, I remove the kernels. I'll link in the description box below my corn canning video. You do need a pressure canner, but I complete it all in about 6 or 8 hours. And then we have 24 cans of corn for the entire year, and usually it lasts us 2. So that's just one example. So that's a vegetable that you would have with dinner. The other thing I think people need to think about when they're growing their own food is, unless you grow a significant variety of food, and every food type has a different type of preservation. So, you know, if you're growing vegetables and you have a freezer, you can blanch and freeze them. But you know, you have to think about how you eat and the foods that you are going to grow. And so our palette or plates are very basic over the winter time because, you know, I can't grow it all, and I really don't like to buy food out of season or from other places on the planet if I can help it. And so if that's not for you or not your jam, then maybe growing your own food isn't for you. But I think food preservation is for everyone. So if you have space, whether it be a shelving system or a freezer system, then I would highly recommend starting there. So starting to learn to preserve before you even grow anything, if you're new to it. If you are already a gardener, then great. But yeah, so that's a lot of talking. Let's get these tomatoes potted up. I have 60 some tomatoes here. And if you remember back to, or if you watched the video of me starting the seeds, I labeled nothing. I just sowed seeds that I knew I liked. So this could potentially be a challenge. But whatever. Well, here we go. Like, I don't really mind. So let's look to see what kind of rooting action we got here. Oh, look at the roots. So that's cool. So what I'm going to do is just poke. I've got my handy dandy. I got a little piece of pear from when I pruned our fruit trees, and I'm just gonna poke the seedlings out of the tray and pot them up. And I'm just gonna randomly choose a bunch of them. Kind of have some in every row, so that's kind of my plan. And I'm gonna high grade and take the ones that are like sturdiest looking from each row, not necessarily the biggest, but they all have really nice roots, so that's really great. So all I'm gonna do is like put a little bit of soil in the bottom of a cup, and I'm actually gonna bury these fairly deep because they will set roots. They'll set roots up the stem of the plant. So I do want them to grow pretty sturdy. So I'll bury them pretty deep. You know, I know that this year, if I run a little low on plant material, I am gonna buy a lot of my plants, a lot of my starts from a local greenhouse, and I've had really nice luck with their plants before, so that's good. And then I will start some plants from seed, but I am a bit of a tomato snob, so, and I had seeds and the space to start just tomatoes, so that's kind of a no-brainer for me this year. But it has been nice not worrying about having to care for the plants. You know, one flat of tomatoes and a little bit of lettuce is a lot different than shelves and shelves of plant material. There's people that make their living growing plants, and so for me, I'm able to support them and be able to grow all of our food, or most of our food. So that's really great. There's a little wren just singing their heart out over there. It's so cute. You know, another message that I kind of wanted to share is around food production, producing your own food, especially in the world that we live in, where everybody or most people work full time. Don't let YouTubers fool you. Definitely. Even me sometimes, you know, when we create content, we edit a bunch of stuff out. We don't record an entire you know, day. It's only little snippets that you see, and so you might think that the job, whatever it is that we're doing, goes really fast, but that is literally the magic of TV. And so what I have learned, and what I didn't realize early on, you know, when I started watching YouTube, or, you know, I didn't think about, was that a lot of the content creators don't work full time at another job. And so as far as like homesteading was concerned, it's a ton of time that you have to devote to all of these projects and all of these things. And so it requires a lot of work. And so, you know, although it might look easy, or, you know, you might be envious of the things that people are doing on YouTube, just know that many, not all, but many YouTubers, especially if they're a partnership, one of the partners works full time until they're well established, and then if neither of them work full time at another job outside of homesteading or whatever it is that they do, it's hard to do both, is what I'm saying. So if you're feeling that it is daunting, that is, and you work full time and you're trying to do this, you know, after work and on weekends and whenever you have time, know that that is a-okay, because if you're doing both of these things, it is a ton of work and time. And that's why I would say, or that I wouldn't recommend growing a garden if you're kind of new to it, for food security. You might be better off getting your food from a local farmer or the grocery store, and preserving it in volume to build up your own pantry or food sources. Look at how beautiful these roots are. I potted up 32 tomato plants. That's a lot of tomatoes, considering I usually plant 12 or 18 plants total, but I'll give some away. And I'm actually going to compost. I'm going to do it on camera so that you can see. I'm going to compost the rest of the seedlings. I don't need them. I shouldn't keep them around. I don't want to take care of them. It's always hard for me to compost plants, but I just don't have a use, and I know I won't be able to give them away. So it feels so wrong. There they are. Anyways, I'm going to go put these back inside. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.